Hello, hello. We're back. We're back after the break here. Short Thanksgiving break. I didn't do anything last week. Played some video games. Did some cleaning. Got sick. Got better. Got sick a little bit again. You know, the usual like wintertime festivities. So we haven't touched our project in over a week. So I looked at it last night for about an hour just to try to like figure out where we left off. And I'm not 100% sure where we left off. So I should have watched my own VOD is what I should have done, but I didn't do that. So from my looks, I think we can just add and remove components. We can like add and remove entities. Not 100% sure on if we have a process for just setting components, like component sets that don't involve a structural change. Doing that with the entity reference, because that's really the only thing you might need to do. Because normally the systems will iterate linearly, but you may need to set components based on an entity reference, which is not ideal because that's like a random access. But it is still something you might need to do. You should at least be able to get component, you know? Or get all the components of an... Yeah, get component would be fine. Yeah, but I think we've done that, most of that stuff, and I think we're going to probably write like a test system and see if any of this works. I think that's what we might do today. Unless I spot any glaring issues here. Logo Hub Samuel, how's it going? Welcome to the chat. How are you doing this week? So let's go through the world and then we'll just dig down. Let's look at all the functions the world might call. Because I think the world is basically not just our data repository, but right now it's acting as our entity manager. Mostly just because I haven't made a separate entity manager. And I don't totally understand why you would necessarily want one, except to just obfuscate. I mean, but we can just make the world information private. Like, I don't totally get it, why you would want a separate entity manager. But whatever. All right, so we can create an archetype, we can create an entity, we can get the next entity ID. This is interesting. Get next entity ID either recycles an entity or, oh, it creates an ID, not create entity. Create entity is different than create entity ID. I see. That's fine. Recycle entity ID is good. I feel like I've organized these like alphabetically, but like the Uncle Bob way to do it would be to like put the more general functions up top and then kind of go through them. Like get entity ID would be above create entity ID and recycle entity ID, because you would just get the entity ID first or get next entity ID, and it would either create the entity ID or the recycle entity ID. You don't necessarily need to know that part. You can just be like, oh, we just get an entity ID. So I don't know. I'm going to keep doing it alphabetically for now. Obviously with like, you know, private before public, static before non-static, you know, whatever. I'm constantly changing my mind about how I want to organize this stuff. It doesn't escape me that our entity ID, our entity component system, while being itself like data-oriented, the structure of the system that manages the entity component stuff is like very object-oriented. It's very weird. It's very weird how that ended up. I mean, that makes sense. That's kind of the most natural way to represent it in like C#. And it doesn't really matter for now. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting that's how that happened. So our public functions that we support in the world are add component with an actual value. So we get the archetype. And then here we dip down into the archetype. So the archetype manages the actual implementation of adding a component. So the archetype has add entity with component. And the source archetype then removes the component. So let's dig into this a little bit. So add entity component. This is kind of a refresher. We're just going to take a little bit of time, refresh ourselves on how all of this works. This will be kind of a chill stream today, getting back in the saddle. All right, so get the entity indices. That's where the entity is in the source chunk or the source archetype. We move everything over from the source chunks. Oh no, we grab our source chunk. We grab our chunk lists, and we have our chunks, our chunk lists, move, copy the components over from their source chunks. So let's just keep diving down until we get an idea of how all this works again. So copy component from, which I think I changed the name of this recently. So this just, it adds a chunk if necessary. It's the easiest way to do that. It's a little bit of a duplicate effort, but it's the easiest way to do it. And we do a component type move component from the destination chunk, or to move component. So we got from, and we've got to. And then we reassign the chunk with an incremented item count. We could store the chunks separately from the item counts, but I don't think it matters. And then so component type. Let's look at component type move component. So component type move component is super simple. Single line, read write span at the destination chunk, and a read only span at the source chunk. It's a little expensive because we get the span and we use it once for the assignment. We get the span, we use it once for the read. So we obviously need different functions for working through it, like working through it at the system level. These are like one-offs. These are designed to be singular functions when you were just referencing an entity. We need like a batch pattern, so we're not just inefficiently like grabbing a span for just one read write. Or even worse, grabbing two spans, one for the read and one for the write. Because it's not free to get the span from the memory. No, this answers my question. We do have a set component. We actually have a couple set components. We have a static set component that just takes chunk info and a value. And then we have this set component. We don't use this, right? Oh, this is a set component that would use if you don't know anything about the entity other than its ID. This we probably want to put on the world. Maybe? I don't know about this. We gotta think about that. Same thing here. Same thing with this get component. I don't know. I don't know about that. But let's pop back out. So we understand move component. Let's pop back up to chunk list. So copy move component from. So let's pop back up from here. So we did all that. We did the copy component from for each chunk in the source of the composition, in the source composition. And composition is just a bit flag, which is nice. So we can grab each flag. We can grab each flag in the composition. And then we just do, for the new component, we just do add component value. Turn my lights down a little. Eyes are not enjoying this. There we go. All right, so what are we looking at? In the archetype, we're looking at chunk list, add component value. Here we go. Add component value as distinct from copy component from. So add component value just has the value. Do we not need any more information than that? I guess not, because we're just adding it on top. So if we need to add a chunk, we add a chunk. And then we just use the static component type set component because we pass in the chunk info. And then we reset the chunk. We increment the chunk's item count. And we have to do it with this reassignment because our structs are, you know, immutable. Okay, that's reasonable. So we can pop back up here to add entity with component. So we add the component value. This is a quick little thing that just says, did we need to add chunks? It's a little inefficient that we do this here and we do this on every single chunk list. We do this check like a bunch of times. I don't know if I care though. The alternative would be to like basically either loop again or pass like a flag in or call add chunk first. Basically say like if this, put this inside the loop and say, if we need to add a chunk per list, then do that first. It's better. It's better than just checking this, maybe? I don't know. Probably. It's probably better to do it up here. I don't really care right now, though. Like, it doesn't matter if an entity is like a handful of components. If an entity becomes like 30 components or something like that, like dozens or hundreds of components, which it would never be, maybe I care, but for like low double digits, I don't know if I care about this enough to change it. So whatever. So if we needed to add a chunk, let's notate that, or let's note that. Then we reassign. Why do I do this? Why do I do it like this? Why don't I just say... Oh, because I've already declared it up here. That's still kind of stupid. We can get rid of this line. Just change it to this. That just reassigns the entity indices. Actually, no, that declares it new. How do we clean this up on the source archetype? Would be my question. We need to do this. We need to get rid of this entity indices on the source. We need to say something like source dot entity indices dot remove entity ID. So I don't think we're doing this at any point. Oh wait, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. We want to finish this up. This is just adding entity with component. And now we did that, so let's pop back out to world. And then the world calls on the source archetype.removeEntity. And that, if we go down here, that handles all of this. So that gets this. It removes this. It's a dictionary. It doesn't have like a pop at or remove at. I can't get the thing and remove it at the same time, I don't think, for a dictionary. It'd be kind of cool if I could. Make sure that's true. It's probably not the way to check that. I'm pretty sure I can't do that. Let's not go through the source code. Okay, so we remove the reference in the entity indices, and then for each chunk list in our archetype, we remove the component at this address. You know, instead of an interchunk index, would it make more sense to just have a reference to the chunk? Or I guess it would be a copy of the chunk, wouldn't it? That's a little worse, maybe? Because chunk is not a reference type. Chunk is a value type. I'm just constantly passing in a chunk and an interior address, so I don't know. I guess I'm getting it here. I'm saying chunklist.chunks, and then I'm using the interchunk index, and I'm passing in the intra-chunk index. And then so let's look at remove component at. Remove component at. So what this does, grabs the... so it's doing two things. Remove component at, what it's doing is it's actually consolidating. So it says, so this is the destination chunk in the destination index. This is the slot that we're going to fill. So this is the component that we've removed. But removing a component by itself is not sufficient. What you need to do is you need to move a chunk. Yeah, component type dot types dot move component. So we move whatever the last component is into this new spot. Chunks. And then we remove a chunk if that move has resulted in an empty chunk. Okay. There's one step that we need to do here, though. If we're messing around with this chunk and we're consolidating entities, we need to update this entity's entity indices. And we're going to do that here. Okay, let's pop back out here. So all this does is it checks this. So you can just do this. So we can just, at the end here, we can also do, we can say, so we need to clean up the entity indices reference here. Oh no, we're doing, okay, so we're doing that. We're doing this part. We're cleaning up the old entity. We need to update the entity that got swapped in. So we need to say entity indices. Oh, we don't have a reverse lookup, do we? Do we? How would we do this? I think I see how to do this. You would get chunk lists 0, or you'd get the chunk list for... Oh, you're a dictionary. Oh, that's easy then. So you say entity indices... Component flag. Oh, you say chunk list. You get the okay, I think I got it. So we say, so to get the entity ID of the entity that we're swapping in for this entity we're removing, we do that by saying chunk lists. We look up the chunk lists by the component type, which is component type dot types dot entity ID. Is that right? No, that's not right. Is it just this? Or is it dot flags? Yeah, okay. So we look that up. We get this chunk, and then within this chunk, we get whatever the top chunk is. Oh, this is a list of chunk lists, F. Okay. I don't know. So this gives us chunks. So then we got to say chunk lists. So give me the entity ID chunk list, and then give me the chunks, and then index in to whatever the topmost one is. Is that fine? Argument di chunk is not assignable to parameter type did. Oh, we need to read this now. So I can get the chunk here. Okay, so we need to say chunks. So give me the last chunk. Okay, we're getting there. Chunks is a list of chunks, and then we need to get, and so we get the last set of chunks there. And then we need to read that. So we need to say component. So I want a static get component. Public static void get component. And that can just be, I guess it should be this. It should be chunk source chunk integer source index. And this would just be, but this needs to be, this needs to return a T. Oops. Public static T. And this basically returns read only, span, source chunk, source index. So we're getting the entity ID that exists at the tippity top of the topmost chunk. Or the bippity bottom of the bottommost, depending on how you want to think about it. But we're getting the last one. And then we're returning that. Return. Yeah, I'm not sold on these. I think we can get rid of these. Maybe we want these. These should probably be world functions, not component functions, component type functions. Do I still need this pragma? I think so. These could be single line, like expression bodies. A little long for this one, but whatever. I'm gonna keep these spans public because I feel like we're gonna use these on the systems. I'll be curious to see how the system logic works. All right, so let's get our component. So we're gonna say component type. Oh, this sucks. We're going to say component type dot flags dot entity ID. Maybe we want like a using component type dot flags. Just to simplify just to shorten this sometimes. I don't know. So for that component type, we say get component. The mess. Oh, it's not T. It's component type dot types dot entity ID, right? No. Oh, did I just plug in entity ID? Yeah, I do. Oops, I'm an idiot. I need the actual concrete type there. And then we get the component. So we need to get the chunks. So this gets our chunk. This thing here. That's doing there. Why are you upset with this? Blah, blah, blah. So we get this. That's the chunk. And then we need the entity indices. I think I need to get this chunk because I need to know. Oh, we just have chunks per list. I actually just use chunks per list. Why do I track chunks per list? Where do we use that? It looks like we use that quite a bit. I'm gonna assign some variables. This is getting out of control. Chunk list is going to be... Like, I'm all for not assigning a variable. Does chunk list already exist? Oh, it does. Could say entity ID list. Entity ID chunk. Maybe we just say chunk. So we get our chunk. We actually don't need this. We can do chunks per list minus 1. I wonder how smart the compiler is. Like, if I assign a variable like this just for readability, I wonder if it can tell that this isn't used in this scope and it could just, like, plug it in here and not actually bother to do it. Probably not, but maybe. It's one of those things I wished I knew a lot more about. All right, so we have the chunk, but now we need the chunk index. And that is going to be... Is that just... Oh, it's chunk dot item count minus 1. Okay, what does get component expect? It expects a chunk and a source index. Oh. Yeah, this should return an entity ID, right? Is that not sufficient? Only assignment, call, increment, decrement, await expression, and new object expressions can be used as a statement. Okay. What am I missing? Why is this unhappy with me? So this returns an entity ID. We know it does. Entity indices is indexed by an entity ID. Oh, we need to actually do something. We need to actually do the assignment. We're just getting a value. We can just say this is entity indices. So we just substitute in the entity indice, the previous entity's indices, like here. Okay, well, I'm glad we store the chunk because we actually need the chunk and we need the item count of the chunk, so that's fine. Okay, well, we're at least updating the entity indices now, which is correct. We need to be doing that. Okay, well, that was a gap. We plugged a gap there. That's good. So this actually will clean up because we're literally plugging a gap. We're substituting in entities whenever we remove entities, just so the lists are always as dense as possible. But we weren't keeping track of where we were moving that new that entity we were using to plug the gap. But now we are. So that's good. And we have a static get component function, which is also good. We needed that. We'll probably just have a get components plural function that just gets everything in a chunk. Sends you back the whole span. Okay, so we did that. Let's pop back out and see where we're at. Okay, so that was the source archetypes removing the entity. That's all done. So that's adding a component to an entity. Okay. We also have create entity. That one's pretty easy. You just tell it what composition you want. We get the next entity ID, which we walked through that a little bit. We either recycle an entity, which involves grabbing this entity, the last entity, the first entity ID that's dead, which is the same, which can be indexed by live entities count. And then you just increment the version. So we increment the version number here. Then we reassign it to that spot. And then we map it. We remap this entity ID. Why is the map indexed by the actual index itself instead of the full ID? I guess it just tells you the entity with this index is actually here. Because there's two different indexes we're mapping, which is super confusing. There's the IDs index, which I should probably refer to by another name. This is kind of confusing because we have the entity ID's index itself, which is like its initial position in this entity ID list. The problem is they move around as they live and die. So we need an index map that maps from their ID's index to the actual index in the live entities list. Or not, it's not even a live entities list. It's an entity ID list sorted by being alive. So everything under the live entities count is alive. Everything over the live entities count is dead. And we do a lot of swapping to make sure that's the case. So that's recycle. Live entities count plus plus. Create is simpler because new entity ID. Live entities count plus plus. Version 0. Should I do version 0 or like version 1? I think version 0 is fine. Problem is that entity ID 00 is like a real entity. How did I fix that? I think I set the entity ID's optional parameters to default to -1, -1. So if we accidentally create an entity ID that's uninitialized, it won't say 00. It should say -1, -1. So that protects us against that issue. I did that right. Entity ID is a component, so it's here. Yeah, it's initialized to -1, -1. Okay, easy. So we add that to the list of entity IDs. Its initial position in the map is trivial because it just maps to itself. It hasn't moved at all. What I'm curious about is how destroying an entity works, but let's get there when we get there. So the first step of creating an entity is getting its ID. Then we find the archetype that's appropriate for it, which get archetype similarly. Okay, so this is get archetype. So get archetype either just straight up gets the archetype if it exists. If it doesn't exist, it creates it. So let's go up there. This is what happens when you try to get an archetype by composition. I spotted what's potentially an issue, but we'll get back to that in a second. Let's finish what we're doing. So create archetype by composition does this. Archetype is a new archetype with this composition. Archetype by composition. We just add it, and then we return the archetype. Easy, easy peasy. Maybe I shouldn't favor having long-ass lines of code, because I realize my head blocks most of them with my new camera position. Because I made it so I can roam. I kind of liked having the ability to roam a little bit. Since I'm standing pretty much exclusively while we stream now. Okay. All right, don't let me forget. Don't let me forget. I want to look back. I want to come back to this. This create archetype thing. Actually, let's not come back to it. So let's look at it right now. So when we add a component, this initial step is just getting the archetype that we're moving everything to. Because we know the source archetype. And actually, it shouldn't be just a straight lookup like this. This should be... This should be get archetype by entity ID. This way we catch it if it fails. Because that one, that variation of get archetype by entity ID either gets the archetype out or it throws an exception. I'm going to call this, there is no archetype mapped to the entity ID. Similarly, I'm going to say there is no component type. There's no corresponding component type mapped to the flag, type flag. This should really never happen, but I'm trying to add some safety here. If it does happen, that's a problem. I haven't finished this game yet? No, I haven't. I know. You'd think it would have been done already. Thank you, iHeartPandas, for the Prime sub. I really appreciate that. Thanks for beaming aboard here. By beaming up, you've committed to joining this crew, so hope you're ready for a 5-year mission. Oh, you got that founder badge. Nice. I'd love to see it. I don't totally understand the criteria by which they divvy those out, but I guess it's like if you don't get it if you're gifted a sub. Well, enjoy that. Enjoy the shiny founder badge. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I'm still feel like we're giving out founder badges. All right. You think it's the first 10 subscribers? Oh, dope. Okay. Well, you're in good company. How's it going? We're kind of going through everything, looking for stuff that I missed, and also kind of just refamiliarizing ourselves with some stuff. Okay, so I was in the process of rewriting this. So we swapped this out, this straight lookup, for a get archetype check, which will add some error checking for us. And so we do all of this stuff. We basically check this thing called the graph edges, which we use a graph system to like check this stuff. So you'd have like where's the graph thing? Yeah, so you can use graph edges to tell the combination of components. So like here's an empty composition, and then there's a graph edge A, B, or C, which represents the archetype that just consists of only A, B, and C. And then if you have a graph edge for B, so if the graph edge for B is on A, you know it's the path to AB, which is the archetype that contains A and B. If there's a graph edge for B on A and B, you know it's the path to the archetype that's just got A. Like what happens if you remove B from AB. So it's like a super great way to represent paths between archetypes, but we initialize these lazily, so we need to fill them in over time. So basically you pay an upfront cost for querying this the first time, and then each time you query it after that, it's just there. So it's pretty great way to do it. All right, so we look for our graph edges. We look through our graph edges. We try to get the graph edge for this value. If we're able to get it, but there's no add component reference, or if there is an add component reference, we do this. Otherwise, if there's no add component reference, archetype by composition, again, this should not be a straight lookup. We should try to make this safer by calling in get archetype. Add a little error checking there. Oh, this is get archetype by ID. This is get archetype by composition, which will get it for us or create it, and then it will assign us into the graph edges. So archetype.add component. Archetype.add component. Is that a static function? Where is archetype.add component? Oh, it's composition. Archetype.composition.add component. So that should be a static function here. It's not. Oh, it's not static, because it takes an existing composition and adds to it. And it makes a new... Oh, it does a super simple OR. It just ORs the existing set of flags with the new flag. That's so great and easy. Bitwise operations are usually hard to parse and annoying and confusing, but occasionally they're just so nice. Like how add component is just an OR and remove component is just an XOR. Love that. Okay, so that's easy. So we're doing that. And yeah, so we're getting archetype by ID, which throws an error if the ID is not mapped. We're doing get archetype by composition, which will either get or create the archetype if it doesn't exist yet. And similarly, that's what made me suspicious, is right here we have just a straight create archetype. Like, somehow this graph edges isn't set up. It's not mapped, and we're just presuming that because it's not mapped, the archetype doesn't exist, which is not correct. That is not something we can presume, or we should presume. So we're just gonna change create archetype to get archetype, and get archetype will handle the creation if necessary. All right, okay, that feels safer. That's better. I could call get archetype get or create. I could do that. I don't want to, but I could do that. We got ads coming up, so we'll take our ad break shortly. All right, so where were we? We were looking through create entity. We were here. So we're looking here. So we get our archetype by composition. And then we reserve the first available slot. I don't love the phrasing of this because it's not clear why we're doing this. This is one of those things where it's like, I feel like the most abstracted function call, like we're creating an entity, and I guess this is part of the implementation details where the archetype needs to reserve the first available slot, which down here, that involves figuring out, so we're adding a chunk if necessary, if the first available slot's in a new chunk, doing that. And then for each chunk list, we also have to reserve the first available slot in the chunk list. And that down here, all that does is it says, it just increments the item count. And then you just add that chunk index, first available slot. All right, we're on an ad break. I'm gonna take a few minutes and just sit down. I'm not used to standing for hours at a time. So just gonna walk around a little bit, sit down for a couple minutes. I'll be back in like 3 minutes. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I know it's kind of a slow, we're in the slow holiday stream here, but we're chilling. So be right back. All right, we're back. Thanks for hanging out. All right, so yeah, I don't love reserve first available slot. I named it this because I don't want to give anyone any illusions about what's happening. Like, we're not initializing any aspect of this entity. All we're doing is reserving a space for the entity. So in that case, I guess this is a good name. Why am I increasing chunks per list every time in a loop? Oh, I'm not doing it in a loop. I see. I tricked myself there. Not putting brackets everywhere gets a little confusing sometimes. But I think GDScript made me like okay with that as a concept of like omitting brackets. So yeah, so we should probably call this like create uninitialized entity, create entity uninitialized. I don't know. Create blank entity. I don't know. Create entity implies all of these things. Obviously, an entity that's created is not initialized. Like, and I don't know why I'm being too crazy with this. This is my code base. Like, obviously, it needs to make sense, but not to like everyone. So archetype by entity ID equals archetype. So we assign this. Should this be like add instead? Because this entity ID shouldn't exist. Let's call it add. Because we're not reassigning anything. Because we're using the full entity ID, not just the index. So this will be different for every entity. Or entity ID. Because this includes the version number. Yeah, let's do that. So archetype by entity ID dot add. Entity ID and archetype. And then we just return the entity ID so that we can hopefully initialize it. Ideally, we will initialize it. All right, so that's creating an entity. I'm curious about this. I'm curious about destroying an entity. So we just pass in the entity ID. So for destroying an entity, we get the archetype, good. So we get the archetype from the entity ID, and then we call remove entity on that archetype. Then we clean up the dictionary by removing it. So let's dive into this archetype remove entity thing real quickly. I think we've looked at it elsewhere. Yeah, this just does the cleaning up of removing an entity and plugging the gap. Presuming there is a gap. You know, I should actually have a check. I should have a check to see if the entity we're removing is at the top. Because if it's at the top, I don't know. We could also just do it. If it's already at the top and we try to fill the spot in, we'll just fill the spot in with itself, which doesn't make sense. Yeah, we actually need a case. We actually need to handle that. So this is the only way we remove entities, right? Let me look at remove component at. Who calls you? So remove component at. Okay. Remove component at the chunk list. Source chunk list, chunk list. So we do it in the world. We directly call remove component at a couple of times. Oh, we call it through the archetype, but we call it directly here at 139. When are we doing that? We're doing that during remove component. We're doing copy component from and then remove component at. Up here, we also do that, right? Is that not what we do up here? When we're adding a component? Or we would do it down in the archetype. We would do... So we do copy component from. And we add the component value. Copy component from doesn't do any mess like that, right? No? It doesn't. Okay. Okay. So I feel like we're going to change the remove component function a little bit, so let's not worry about that too much. So remove component at just grabs whatever's at the top and plugs it in. Where should we check to see that? Should it be here? Because we still want to do this check of like, we want to reset the source chunk with a lower item count. If our new item count, if we've reduced the item count to 0, we still want to remove the chunk. So maybe we just add a quick check here that says like, basically it would just ask if these are the same, right? This is kind of why I want like a chunk address struct or something. I'm hesitant to pass around... whatever, who cares? We can just do a quick check and we can say if these are the same, don't do this. If these are the same, just get rid of the info. And by get rid of the info, I mean just don't index it. Just remove it from the item count, and we just don't use it. We just pretend it's not there. Move component. Yeah, the move component is the step that we can skip, assuming that the entity that we're removing is the last entity in the list. So where do we have this? This is directly on the component types. And it's not a static function because... Can this be abstract and static? No, right? Overridable method cannot be static. I see. Wait, then do we need to override it? Yeah, we do, because we call it with the spans. Okay, so we just can't make it static because it's overridable. Okay, that's fine. This function's maybe too long. And by too long, I mean it goes too far to the right. This tune is very Stardew Valley. I've been playing a lot of... I've finally got 1.6. Console. Been playing through that. I mean, I guess there's no harm moving components that's the same. Because you're basically moving something, you're just assigning something to itself. Like, doesn't really matter. It's unnecessary work, but I don't think it actually causes any problem. It's just there's an unnecessary assignment, but then we still just remove the item count. We just still lower the item count, and then it doesn't matter at all. So I don't know. Is checking for this every single time we remove the component worth saving us from a very rare, occasional, unnecessary move? Probably not. Yeah, forget it. Who cares? Oh, there is this step, though, which is the resetting the entity indices. Because if there's this move up, and that means, so we remove this entity ID, and then the problem is we're just adding this entity ID back to this. So we need to check for it here, at least. So let's just assign this entity. Let's just grab this. Call this replacement. Oh, we need to define the chunk first. So we'll check this replacement. Oh, it's substitute. Call it sub ID. There we go. I like that. Sub ID. And what we'll do is we'll just say if sub ID is not equal to entity ID, then we do this. Okay, so we're doing the move. We may be unnecessarily moving components around when we don't need to, but I don't care about that. But we do need to prevent the entity indices from re-adding this ID that we've just removed a few lines above. On the rare occurrence that the entity to remove at is the same as the substitute. That we need to prevent. if nothing else. Okay. But we're spotting a lot of little misses here. So we're probably not going to end up doing our testing today, but I think we're doing good as far as plugging little gaps that I didn't notice when I'd written this previously. All right, so how did we get here? We were looking through. We fixed add component. We were looking through that. We were looking through destroy entity, I feel like. We were still looking at this, yeah, because we were looking at get archetype dot remove entity at DID. And that took us here. And so we've handled all of this now. Remove component at does all of the good stuff. All right, so I'm happy with pretty much all of this. So I got a bit of a cough here. Apologies if you end up catching any of that. You know. All right, so we did that. We removed the entity. We're removing the archetype. We're removing the entities in the entity ID from the archetype dictionary here. Other ID. So the other ID. The other ID is our substitute, right? I'll rename this sub ID instead of other ID. Maybe sub entity. I don't know, whatever. Sub ID is fine. So we get the sub ID, which is just whatever the first dead ID is. Oh, no, it's the last living ID. So we get the last living ID. I guess we should check to make sure. Here we should have a check. We should have a if sub ID is not equal to entity ID. Then we'll do all this stuff. Okay, fine. So if it is the same, we'll just return. I guess I should do that here too. Oh no, we've got it here on a single line. This is fine. Actually, yeah, let's do it that way. Instead of making this... God, come on. Let me get rid of this indexing. There we go. We'll just make this a return if it is the same. Why are you unhappy with me now? Turn type is void. Yeah. The Doodliest Catch. Hey, how's it going? Oh, why is it convinced that this is within the scope of this if statement now? Probably because I didn't add a semicolon. Yeah, I'm doing good, Doodliest. How are you doing? How was your... I don't know if if last week was a holiday week for you, but I hope you're doing well. I'm doing good. We're back at it. We've been kind of just making little modifications, rereading the code, seeing where we left off. Oh, we can... Maybe we do this differently, because this is sub ID. So maybe we do... Write it like this. It's a lot shorter. Didn't realize it was that short. For you, it was October 13th, Thanksgiving. You're just surviving. Barely. I see. Where is it Thanksgiving on October 13th? Oh, Canada. Fascinating. All right, well that's cool. Well, hope you're hunkering down for the winter. All right, I've already been like sick twice, I think, just from the change of weather and stuff. All right, so that's removing entities. Where did we leave off here? Oh, right here. Destroy entity. So if the sub ID, so if our sub ID is the same as our entity ID, and the sub ID is the entity we would like to substitute in. Yeah, you ready for it? It's gonna be a cold one this year. Yeah. I'm a fragile California flower, so for me, if it's like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm like very cold. Must be nice where you are. Yeah. 50 is nice. Hey, bad cop. Yeah. You know. I've lived next to the ocean for so long though, that if I go anywhere else where it's dry, like if I leave my little coastal enclave here, I just dry out. I'm like a dried out SpongeBob. It's horrible. You'd rather have it be 50 than 90? For real. Yeah, I'm not that kind of a California flower. I'm not like a SoCal. I'm not like, I don't want it to be blue skies and sunshine and like beach weather every day of the year. That's not me. That's why I live up here. You went to Vegas, you're like, oh god, I could never live here. I know, I'm just from San Jose, and San Jose is that dry. It's so dry, you like, my sinuses just like shrivel up. I hate it. Yeah, the high desert's even worse. Like I couldn't live in a desert. I want a nice cold, foggy dew. How's it going, bad cop? They could just make SF a smidge cheaper. Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. That's the real problem. So unaffordable. It would be perfect. Just a smidge. I know, right? Or even just a freeze, like have it stop going up. Yeah. I feel like we didn't get the prop that was supposed to add additional rent control options. I feel like that was on the ballot and it didn't pass, but maybe it did. I don't know. I'm so bad at keeping up with that stuff. But yeah, rent control is always nice. Yeah, they voted. The California voters voted some crazy shit. Yeah, we did. We did. We as a populace are not as liberal as both the world thinks we are and also as we think we ourselves are. Our image of ourselves does not match our reality in recent years here. As far as what we do amongst ourselves. Yeah, they went like just like fuck it. I ain't reading all that. You know what it is though? Like honestly, I've lived long enough to know that a huge motivator for why someone might deny someone else something simple like that, like something that is like it should be a gimme, like minimum wage, like the minimum wage increase or something like that. People will just deny other people that sort of thing because they didn't have it themselves and they don't think it's fair, even though it like no longer applies to them. They're like, I see that all over the place where people deny other people things because they're like, well, I didn't get to have that, or like, I don't think you need that. Like, it's like, it doesn't affect you. Just let them have it. Like, let them have the things. Let the people who need the things have the things. Jeez. Or even they just anticipate not needing it. Yeah, but what's really annoying is when they anticipate what other people don't need. They're like, we shouldn't have that. You shouldn't get to have this because, you know, I don't think you need it, even though this doesn't apply to me. It's crazy. It's wild. Oh, well. All right, so what were we doing? We're checking the substitution, which should be fine. So the index map, which maps to the ID's index, or maps the ID's index to the actual index in like the living entity list. So we're swapping places. So this entity is going to exist here. So we're swapping the substitute in for the old entity, and we're substituting the old entity in for this substitute here. That's confusing, but we're doing it. Do I change this? So we're saying... So we're changing this and then reading this. Is there a problem with that? Probably. You love when people vote for stuff that benefits the rich in hopes that they will be rich someday. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You just try to go for a holistic. Do I think we would be better with or without this thing? But you're in a pretty privileged position, so I don't know. I mean, that's the best you can do when you're in that kind of a privileged position is like give the benefit of the doubt. Or more, even better is just like listen to the people that are actually directly affected by the thing, which so many people don't do. They think they know better. I mean, I live in a swanky part of San Francisco, so I see that all the time. I also hear it, you know, I overhear the stuff people say that they think, you know, other people need. It's like when a rich person tells it's like when a rich executive tells a poor person that like low wages builds character. It's like, okay, I guess. You admittedly should have done more research. You're kind of cramming that. Yeah, me too. There's a voting block that like I largely agree with, and I honestly put maybe a little too much. I maybe delegate a little too much of my too much of my research to them. Because, like, I don't always agree with their decisions. Like, I don't always vote with them. But they usually do really thorough research, and I haven't had issues with it normally. But this year, somebody told me that, like, one of their representations of, like, one of the supervisor candidates was, like, super off base. And I was like, oh, shoot. Do I actually have to, like, scrutinize the research that they're doing for me? Yeah. Yeah, it really helps to see who... I guess there is nothing more telling with, like, a prop than looking to see who is backing it and who is against it. That's, like, the most telling... Like, yeah, you can read all sorts of write-ups on whatever these things, but you really just need to be like, who is paying to get this passed and who is paying to keep it from getting passed? Yeah, super weird. There was one prop, I forgot which one it was, but it had literally zero opposition. There was nobody that opposed it publicly, and it still didn't pass. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is happening? I forgot which one it was, but it was just like, it should have been a gimme. It should have been just a gimme, and it failed, and it's like, are you for real? It had no opposition, like no public opposition. Yeah, I don't remember which one that was. They killed anyone who opposed it? Yeah, that must have been what they did. All right. Okay, I'm a little suspicious of this little entity substitution that we're doing here. Because we're just updating this, and then we're plugging... Yeah, this is wrong. I'm doing... Oh, wait, these are two different things. We're updating the list, and then we're updating the map. Okay, that's fine. I need to read more. I need to finish reading. We're just keeping all the live entities packed together and just... Okay, that's easy. Well, that's politics in San Francisco for the nobody who asked for it. You do JetBrains with Godot? I do JetBrains for the C# with Godot. It works okay. It's not very hot reloady, like you need to constantly rebuild it, but I don't do it with GDScript. There's an option to. It actually works kind of fine with GDScript. Let me see if I can grab one of my GDScript files. It's not in my solution. Of course it's not in my solution. Here. It works okay for GDScript too. It looks a little weird. Your ballot never came? That's wild. We're near the end of the day and only 27 people had voted at the location so far. Wow. Yeah, I think almost everyone votes by mail nowadays. I mean, at least in places where they just automatically send you one. So yeah, I kind of don't... It kind of weirds me out to look at GDScript in JetBrains. I think I'm probably just going to end up doing this part of it in Godot still. And just treat it kind of separately. But yeah, for C#, it's been working fine. It's a little weird. But JetBrains seems to be smart about it. It's not complaining about much. It's complaining about onReady. Typo in the word onReady. Replace with ready. Okay, that's wrong. So it's mostly right. It mostly knows what it's talking about. Not entirely, though. Yeah, it's a little weird to do GD in here. Dang, you use types in your GDScript. You usually do the hybrid, like drop off the ballot. Oh, that's probably the best thing to do. Probably should have done that. I really don't trust the post office nowadays. It took them 10 days to deliver a rent check from here to Daly City one time. For anyone who, isn't familiar with the distance between San Francisco and Daly City, they're basically next to each other. So yeah, I shouldn't have trusted the post office with that. Especially since I filled out my ballot, I think like Sunday or something like that. All right, so we're reasonably happy with destroy entity. This is like a brand new ECS system that I haven't looked at in like 2 weeks. And so we're kind of just going through and like looking at the different functions. We've spotted quite a few errors already. So we're kind of just going through. We want to look at remove component. That'll probably be the last thing we do today because I'm pretty sure I wrote remove component incorrectly. So you mix C# and GDScript. I didn't even know you could do that. I don't really. I have my system like really separated. I'm like trying something kind of weird because I'm doing this. I want to separate my stuff in the render, my stuff in the scene tree from the stuff that's not in the scene tree at all. So I'm doing this weird thing where I'm gonna have, I basically have like, my input handler, like auto loads. This is like a partial system diagram. It's like really stupid, but you get like the input handler autoloader or something like that. And you have at the root of your scene tree, like a game manager or something like that. And then all of the stuff in C#, like a state manager, different systems, like stuff for the ship and the crew and the whatever. You have all of the C# land stuff just totally separated. Why not do it in C++? Because I don't know how. That is a great question, and the answer is you should absolutely do this in C++. And then we have all of that pass through and then pass back to a scene manager, and then we put shit in the scene tree. And then the stuff in the scene tree can talk to the input handler. It's like, it's really dumb how I've decided to do this. And yeah, it's entirely because I'm not good at C++. I'm barely passable at C#. But yeah, this is the only node that I've written in C#, which is just the game node. And that's just going to be the main system. And it's just going to be the one thing that like initializes. It's going to be the only thing hooked into like the loop and just run the main system every frame. And then maybe in Q commands, I don't know, I haven't thought about input commands very much yet. But yeah, I'm basically just going to have one node that hooks into this whole other ECS system that doesn't actually talk directly to the scene tree very much. So I'm not really mixing C# and GDScript. It's like the rendering and the UI stuff will just be in GDScript, backed by nodes, and then the gameplay logic stuff will just be in C# in this little entity component system I'm making. It's really dumb. I don't know why I'm doing it this way. I guess it's because I want to have a simulation heavy game, and I want to have entities that are more lightweight than things in the scene tree, because I don't really need that much stuff in the scene tree if I'm just simulating most stuff off screen. I want to keep the scene tree kind of lightweight. Yeah, it makes sense. I feel like the idea of what I'm going for makes sense, but the process that I'm using to get there, it doesn't make sense. Like I'm using C# in an ECS that's eventually probably going to be manually memory managed. It's not yet, because that's insane. I wouldn't just start out with that, but like, yeah, C# doesn't make sense, but the rest does. Yeah, C# doesn't make sense. It's what I know. I mean, I'm already taking like weeks, if not months, to make an ECS. I could also take weeks, if not months, to make the ECS in C++ to like learn C++ better. I mean, maybe I'll refactor it someday into C++. Yeah, doing this in C# is so stupid. C++ is not so far removed from C#. I know, I always get intimidated by it. I feel like it wouldn't be that crazy to just learn C++. Just hesitant to learn on this project. I mean, but I am learning on this project, but I'm hesitant to like write this project in a whole brand new, in a programming language that I've never really seriously taken up before. Just scary. It is risky because there's a lot of bad learning material available. Yeah. Yeah, learning that the bad way would not be great. It seems pretty obvious though, because like all the stuff that I've been researching for entity component systems, almost all of it is written in C++. People have written these in C#, and I've also referenced those, but it's like more straightforward to do this stuff. You don't know, you honestly don't even know what you would recommend for starting with C++ in 2024? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. For games, maybe I could do like some of like Casey Muratori stuff. Like I could either go back and like look at Handmade, or like I know Casey has a new course. I'd be interested in trying that. I feel like that must be C++. I haven't looked at it. What's their course even called? Oh, I tried to go to the Molly Rocket Discord and there are no text channels on it. That's weird. When did that happen? That will almost definitely be old C++. Oh god. Yeah, you're right. You're probably right. Half of what I've been doing while writing this in C++ has been just learning, or not in C++, in C#. A lot of the learning that I've been going through on this has been just learning all of the features that they've added to C# since I was using Unity like years ago. Since I was and like the old ass version of C# that Unity had support for. Using the cutting edge C# features has been kind of fun. Some will argue you should only use old C++, but I don't know. It seems very opinionated. But yeah, I'm using a suboptimal language for what I'm trying to do. But it talks to Godot okay. I understand it okay. It accomplishes what I need okay. But yeah, it's definitely not ideal. I'll probably eventually get sick enough of the garbage collector that I'll start managing most of the memory myself. You think some of new C++ is pretty nice? I'm sure it's quite nice. You know, I could probably do worse than just studying Godot's GD extension and like modeling something off of kind of their recommendations and the stuff they've actually written for GD extension in C++. I could probably look at some of that stuff and get an idea. I don't even know where I would start. And yeah, if you don't know where I would start either, that's not good. That does not give me confidence. All right, so we're fixing remove component. So we're not directly looking up this dictionary. We're gonna get archetype by this entity ID. Yeah. I think it'd be cool for, I mean, people that write C++ are just, they're real programmers, you know? I write C# and like JavaScript and like GD script, like it feels like there's a difference. It feels like some Giancarlo Esposito, we are not the same kind of stuff. No, you're not. All right. So, Okay, so we just fix this stuff. So again, we don't directly call into this. We say get archetype. That way we get or create. Same deal here. We want get archetype. Oops. You write Bash, you're not a real programmer. I don't know. Bash. Writing in Bash feels like real programming to me. You get the kind of, it gives like hacker vibes. Like I'm not comfortable like exploring computer systems using like a command line interface. All right, so we're doing that safely. What did we change up here? We changed a few things to add component. So we do the add with component and then we do the remove. And so this skips the add with, this just does the remove. Right? And then it just updates this. Okay, so we do the remove. So we're directly calling remove at. Oh, because this is removing a component, not removing the whole entity. Right, right. Okay, so this is maybe mostly correct. We don't use RT. We don't need to, huh? This doesn't need to be type aware. It's not... Well, somebody needs to be type aware about this because we are moving information around. I guess the chunk list just needs to know. It's fun because if you screw up, you could do major damage to your system. Yeah, that is thrilling. Have you gone to any of the meetups recently? I got to go to the one in October with Juan Lenitsky, which was cool. Juan brought one of the W4 Games executives too, so I got to talk to one of them. But that one was really cool. That one was crazy. We like filled the entire like upper hackatorium with people for that. Yeah, that was cool. I got to do that. I got to show off my little auto tiler tools in my last game jam. That was fun. Yeah, it was packed. It was packed. It was really fun, but it was packed. And then I didn't go in November because I like hurt my back. But I'm doing better now, so I'm hoping to make it to this month's, which is the 20th. We'll see. That is like the week before Christmas. I've gone to a meetup before and like nobody been there, especially around this kind of time of year, so I'm always suspicious. Wouldn't it be 21? You're probably right. I don't know how to read calendars. 21st. Yeah, you're right. I don't know how to read calendars anymore because my workplace, our weeks start Monday. So our weeks run from Monday to Sunday. So whenever I look at a calendar now, my brain is broken. I don't know how to do Saturday. I don't know how to do Sunday to Saturday weeks. It even took me a minute to think about that. I'm like, you think that's the one day you're busy this month? Yeah. I think it's gonna be really quiet. I think January will be pretty quiet, and then I think it'll pick back up as everyone gets ready for like the next GDC and stuff. You agreed to a Minecraft charity stream again? That sounds awesome. I have been getting all these ads. I took like a week or two off streaming, and I'm like, I log in, they're like, do some charity streams, do them now, and I'm like, oh, okay. Your team's last charity stream was so cool. The little coding game that you wrote where the editor was getting changed all the time. That's like maybe like the coolest thing that I've seen that I've seen for one of those. It's probably the coolest coding challenge program I've seen. It was fun. Just a normal software and game dev stream? No. Not good enough. Yeah, that won't raise any money. No, that was great. That was great. Your human WebSocket did a great job. All right, so this handles all the moving. I don't know why I have this. Get rid of that. So this basically looks exactly the same, huh, as the add component. So we say add entity with component. So we should call this on the destination. Can this handle? Oh, it's more like we need an add entity without component. That's what we need. This feels like a different process that I had before. Yeah, this is the old process. The new process is like offload as much of this to the archetype as possible. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do like add entity without component. I guess we don't need to say without component. The destination archetype just won't copy over information that it doesn't need. Or maybe we do need to do that. I don't know, that's weird. You crushed the goal with the coding thing? Yeah, that was awesome. The org was super happy because you asked for a budget of $0 to raise $3 grand. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. People would ask for like, they ask money so that to raise money. That's wild. Makes sense, particularly for our. Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, my partner's done a lot of work for like nonprofits, and yeah, it's really tough to do anything like that, especially in person. So yeah, we're not doing it like this at all anymore, are we? This is the old way. I really hope this wasn't the new way. Yeah, because this is where managing all of this stuff that I think it's really rightfully the job of the archetype to manage. So we're gonna do it like that. I just need to decide how I want it. So source archetype dot remove entity, we just do. That's easy. And then we need to decide how we want to add copy over. So we have add entity with component. Call that on the destination, and you do that because the source won't provide this. So for this, we want to, so you're going for here, you're going through each source component, and we do copy component from. So this all makes sense. So we do want to iterate through the source. So maybe we should do without component and add a flag, and then we just know we can skip that one. All right, we got ads about to start. I'll probably go get some water when that happens. So we just add a check here of like, is component the same as type flag? If so, just skip. So let's just make a public void add entity without component. Actually, all right, ads. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. All right, we're back. Oh, now we're like listening to like the Factorio soundtrack. It's that da 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 da. All right, we got add entity without component. Don't need to know the type for that. Okay, so we don't need to do the add component value. We do need to do this part. Need to record the entity indices. Okay, pretty much exactly the same, except we're just omitting one component with the copy, which it would be easier to do if we were iterating over the destination instead of the source. I guess there's no reason we can't do that. Let's just iterate over our composition. We can get rid of the check. In which case we don't even need to... hydrate from the Leandro. Hey, Leandro. How's it going? It's been a minute. We're kind of ramping up. We're slowly ramping back up here. Starting today. Took last week off. So this isn't add entity without component. It's kind of just like... Did you get time to recharge? Yeah, kinda. Man, you need a vacation yourself? Yeah, for real. I kind of just didn't do anything. I spent all of Black Friday shopping for computer parts and then didn't purchase anything. That was like some kind of experience. But it was chill. I had a chill weekend, thanks. But yeah, everyone needs a vacation. It's the time of year where we all just need to be working less, just chilling more. Winter is coming. You did the same and you were experiencing some nicer deals. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was trying to make a couple budget machines. A backup machine for myself and a machine for my partner, but it was like not impressive. I built my current machine during the July Prime Day, and I got better deals. I mean, I also had to go exclusively through Amazon, so that wasn't great, but like you have to put in a lot of work to find good Black Friday deals. You need to be shopping around to you need to be like, I'll get this piece from B&H Photos. I'll get this piece from Newegg. I'll get this piece from seller on Amazon. Like, you really gotta put in the work nowadays to get a good Black Friday deal. / Cyber Monday. Last one, you got lucky. You got a ROG Ally for half price. That is a good deal. There were some good deals. There were some actually good deals on some some AM4 processors. And so I was like, oh, I could build an AM4 machine. But AM4 is so close to death that the memory wasn't that cheap anymore. And the graphics cards were okay, but I'm just gonna wait another year and then build a cheap AM5 machine next year. A couple cheap AM5 machines next year. Hopefully, unless tariffs just destroy everything. We'll see. Then you add up shipping. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Tough stuff. All right, so we're not calling this add entity without component because we don't even, it's just like add entity. Let's just call it add entity. It's more like copy entity. Maybe we should call it copy instead of add. Because to me, add implies that, like, it wasn't there before. I mean, obviously it wasn't there before, but, like, it's not as clear to me. I think copy entity with component is kind of cool. And then copy entity by itself, because you pass in an entity and a source to copy from. We don't even have to call it source. We could call it like from. Now let's call it copy. Well, let's do this right. Well, nothing references this, so I can just call this copy. This one does have a reference. Copy entity with component. And this is just copy entity blank, which does mean it should be above this one. The benefit of this one is we just iterate through the destination or our composition, and we only copy over components that we are interested in. We're not trying to add this additional component like here. Add copy of. That's actually kind of nice and efficient. Add copy of. I don't love the sound of add copy of with component, though. Add copy of entity would be fine. I think copy is okay. I don't mind copy entity from, because we have copy component from. But I think it's fine. Copy implies that there's a from. And then here, copy with component implies that we're introducing some additional thing. This is good enough. I don't want to go crazy on this stuff. The ROG Ally, how do you like that? I have a Steam Deck. I haven't really tried any of the alternatives. The ROG Ally is just a Windows machine, right? It's just a full Windows machine, or is it like using like a light version of the OS? Which I don't even know if that exists. You love it. Like all caps, spaces between the letters. You love the ROG Ally. Okay. Full Windows machine. Really? Huh. How's that work out? I mean, you said you love it, but like, what's like the craziest games that you're playing on it? The worst part is Windows. I mean, that goes without saying. Because I started playing Subnautica on the Steam Deck, and it was like, it rendered it perfectly. Like, it wasn't hanging, but like the battery was just tanking. It was like, and it was heating up. Like, I didn't lose any frames or anything, but it was like, that seemed like maybe the most complicated game I could run on it. It was like a big 3D game, like, not even a big 3D game, but just like Subnautica, like, like a medium-sized 3D game. Touch support is weird. You're finishing Baldur's Gate 3? Okay. Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, technically Baldur's Gate 3 is Steam Deck friendly. I would not want to... How do you interact with that interface on like a small screen? That sounds terrible. Did they like redo the interface? Yeah, battery's okay, but don't expect much. Yeah. I got a big add-on battery pack for my Steam Deck that like sits on the back. I haven't tried it out yet, but it should give me like 2 additional like charge cycles worth of battery. But I'd only need that if I'm like at a convention or like a plane or train. Same UI as console? Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. All right, so we've got our copy entity. Let's plug that in. I know, I'm getting distracted because I'm like maybe fatigued. I'm like not used to doing this anymore. I'm not even used to standing for like 3 hours, let alone streaming. Did you get the Steam Deck OLED? No, I got the original one last year when it went on sale. I don't know what size, probably the 256. I don't remember, honestly. But no, I just have the original one. Someday I might get an OLED version. It does look pretty. It's a good device. Yeah, I like it. I definitely like that form factor. I did just see the leaked image for the Steam Deck, or not the Steam Deck, the Steam Controller 2. And that looks like a good time. It's like basically like the controls straight from like the Steam Deck, just as a controller. I'm like, that could be good. All right, so here we can just say DST archetype, copy entity, entity ID, source archetype. We don't need this type flag. Did I leave that in the signature? Oh no, it's just confused. I did not leave that. Why do I pass the flag and the value? What do I use the type flag for? I use it in one place. Could I just say component type T dot flag? Is that a thing? Looks like it's a thing. Oh, but it's not static. That's unfortunate. Do you expect your ECS to be reusable in other projects? Maybe. Maybe. It depends. It depends on how we deal with some complicated things, like a ship's hull, which is like a 3D like block. Like, is that its own entity? And you just iterate through all of the blocks? Like, or is it like a dynamic buffer and it's not like an entity? It's like a chunk of memory that we store on the entity. Like, it depends on how we address some of the more specific things. But in a basic sense, yes. I think very strong yes. It should be reusable in some sense. Okay, so I can't use this unless I actually have. That's unfortunate. So that's why I'm passing in the type flag. Okay. I can't make this static. Okay, whatever. Who cares? All right, so adding and removing a component is done. That was the main thing. Removing a component does not need to know the T anymore. Or it never did, but I wrote it like that for some reason. We just need the flag. Do we even need this? Do we use this? Type flag, try get. Oh yeah, we do, because we're getting the way out. Okay. This is reasonable. We went through pretty much all of our code, found quite a few issues, fixed all of them. I think what we're gonna do tomorrow is just test. Just do some testing. Probably set up a test system and just like add entities, change like add components, remove components, set components. Just try some of that stuff. I don't have a set component command function here, do I? Let's do that, I guess. Public void set component entity ID. Is it set component T? Yeah, because we have to have the value. Component T. Do I need to pass in the flag? I don't want to. But I do need to get the flag, is the problem. Probably I need to pass the flag. Could have just, yeah, let it autofill that for me. I don't know why I didn't. So we have a set and a get here. We do our get a little differently. We don't have a get component on the world. We probably need that. So we should have a set and a get. And these are the variants that take like an ID. So this is for like an individual action. We want some separate like batch instructions. I currently have these just here, but I kind of don't want to do it like this. Because yeah, we have to get the game world to do it anyway, so we might as well just have this be on the game world. So we need a set and a get. Oh, not component type. Public T. Why are you deeply upset about this T? Oh. Please do a word count for component and type after this is ready. Yeah, we use that a lot. And what's worse is we have components, we have types, and we have component types. My partner laughs at me because like she was listening to me stream during our last stream a couple Saturdays ago, and I say the word chunk so often, like chunk, chunks, chunk lists. She's like, "What are you doing on your stream?" And I'm like, "It's all about the chunks. It's all chunks all the way down." All right, get component's easy. Get component is get archetype entity ID dot. We're just gonna have a get component. Or it's get archetype for entity ID dot get component entity ID type flag. It's this. a get component here. Autocomplete in JetBrains is pretty dope. I don't hate it. So for this, we just say we just call component type t dot get component. We just need the chunk, so we say chunk list type flag, or we need to get the entity indices. So we get the entity indices, so we say type flag, chunk list you index by flag, right? Chunk lists. JetBrains UX is really good. Yeah, it's really nice. You wish you could use it at work. Visual Studio is so horrible. Yeah, bulky and slow. It is. It truly is. I don't understand anyone who like insists on using Visual Studio. I mean, at least use VS Code or something, right? At least use something you have some control over. I used Visual Studio for a long time in my Unity days, so I get it. So we get our chunk list by type flag. We get chunks. Yep, that one. So we get our chunk. We get component with all of this stuff. Probably can skip the assignment here and just do this twice. Compiler's smart enough to know that, right? To optimize that. We return. All right, so that's how we get a component. A lot of lookups. You work at Microsoft, they enforce us. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I get why that company maybe forces you to use Visual Studio. You miss mono develop? Really? Okay. I mean, I don't doubt it. I have like low expectations for my IDEs. Like the Unity domain reloading bothered me way more than Visual Studio ever did. Just like the multiple seconds of like just hanging every time you would make any change. Why does this say return value is never used? Okay. Oh, because we call it, but we don't use the value. Okay, that's weird. We just say return get archetype dot get component. Oh, get component T. Okay. I don't love this cascading of calls, but it's like the easiest way to do this. I don't love how object-oriented my entity component system is. At least the system that like manages it. The thing that like orchestrates it. Feels weird. It feels like I'm mixing things together weirdly, but whatever, who cares? All right, let's write this set component, and then I think that's going to be it. So for today, to be clear. So we just say, we do the same basic thing. We just devolve responsibility to, we just say return get archetype entity ID dot set component entity ID. Maybe we don't need to pass the type flag. I didn't use the type flag at all there, did I? Oh no, I did here. When we get the chunk lists, we need to pass in the type flag. I need to be able to get the type flag from T. I'll find an easier way to do that. Oh, we don't need to return anything. This is just a void. Set component. Oh, yeah, okay. So here we've got our set component. Why are these all the way down here? More specifically, why is this one all the way up here? All right, public void set component entity ID int value. What? T value. I guess I should have defined the T. Component T, where T is unmanaged, because that's how we do. All right. We're just going to say component type T dot set component. Oh wait, no, not here. We're going to do get archetype. Or no, we are the archetype. What are we doing? Chunk lists. Oh no, we're saying get component type. Oh, we are calling component type dot set component. T set component. We need the chunk lists. Just this, right? Not the entity ID. Set component. We need the destination index, which is. Oh, you set this. I want this to be just type flag. That should be it. Set component, static. Let's get rid of these non-static versions. Don't make sense. That should be my get and my set, my individual get and set. All right, cool. I think that's it. I need to go do some laundry, so I gotta wrap it up. But it's been kind of a slow start. Obviously, we took like a week and a half off. It's the holidays. People are busy, but I appreciate y'all taking the time to hang out here. Oh, thank you for the button mash, Leandro. How do we still have access to this? I thought we had access to this for like 48 hours, but I'm enjoying it. I love that. I love that emote. But yeah, we'll be back every day this week, you know, from today through Saturday. So big week. I would love to finish up this entity component system by the end of the year and actually get back to the game after the holidays here. Unless, you know, we do what Bad Cop suggests and we just rewrite the whole thing in C++. Which has a greater than 0 chance of happening, but hopefully a low enough chance that it doesn't happen. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. I gotta run because I'm running out of time to do this before I got a meeting. I gotta get the laundry and get the laundry out, go to this meeting. So I'm gonna run. ECS at compile time. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out, Leandro, and everyone else. Yeah. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'm gonna see y'all next time. Bye.